This weekend, we have not just one, but 2 days in hell.
On Saturday, it's the 3rd edition of Paris-Roubaix Femmes avec Zwift, and then on Sunday, it's the 120th edition of the men's race.
Both races will, of course, be live on GCN+. Saturday's coverage begins at 1400 BST, Sundays at 9:30 in the morning.
Territory restrictions apply. Coming up, all you need to know about the course and its minor changes versus last year, plus a look at the contenders and their current form.
But first up, let's get ourselves G'd up by looking back at the last 2 years of racing.
From the first cobbles, the carnage and the chaos started. It was a classic Paris-Roubaix.
He's a legend of Roubaix, no? This year is my year.
Colbrelli making his move.
Women's cycling is at this turning point, and like you say, today is part of history.
Lizzie Deignan makes history here in Roubaix. Colbrelli through the centre, Colbrelli through the centre. Viva Italia, Forza Italia. On his own, the job done. Dylan van Baarle, it's all yours. Paris-Roubaix goes to Italy and Elisa Longo-Borghini.
Two very different races, I think you could say. All lived up to expectations, but whilst last year's was dry, as most were for about 50 decades, the previous year in 2021, as you saw, was a very wet, muddy affair. We will let you know what the current forecast is for Sunday later on in the show.
First up though, the routes. We'll begin with the men's, and I got some bad news.
Go on.
It's 1 kilometre shorter than last year, with 1 fewer sectors of cobbles.
Pretty much a disaster, really, isn't
Basically,
it?
yeah.
We joke, of course. The race starts in Compiègne, as it has done every single year since 1977, and obviously finishes in Roubaix, as it has done almost every year since 1896.
Wow.
I've noticed a couple that finished just outside Roubaix.
Is that right? Good fact. Along the way, they'll be taking on 256.6 kilometres that includes 29 sectors of pavé, totalling 54.5 kilometres. The first of which comes after 96 kilometres of racing on predominantly wide, open, gently undulating roads where a whole host of riders and teams will be looking to get into that day's early breakaway.
Which last year was pretty much half of the peloton, wasn't it? Because Ineos Grenadiers lit things up in the crosswinds, temporarily leaving a number of the big favourites trailing behind. And you would imagine that around half the peloton will again be trying to get into the early days breakaway this year. Anyway, that first sector that Si talked about is Trois-Villes-sur-Inchy, 2.2 k's long and one of 13 3-star sectors.
Yeah, what makes this one of the hardest of those 3-star sectors, though, is that it's the first one, basically. Under normal circumstances, there will be a big fight to hit it in a decent position if you're in the bunch.
Yeah, that overused cycling saying applies to this first sector. It can't be won there, but it can most certainly be lost. The following 3 sectors come very soon after, and with less than a kilometre of tarmac road between each of them, it's a really intense part of the race once they do hit the cobblestones. Sector 3 is actually the equal longest of the race at 3.7 kilometres, Kivy-Saint-Python, and is the first 4-star sector of this year's race, as it was last year.
Yeah, 35 k's and 5 sectors after that, they'll be on Asprey-Artillon, which is being used for the first time since 2004 when it was given a 4-star rating. And that'll be why you don't recognise the name, not my pronunciation. Now, straight after it comes the longest section of smooth road between any 2 sectors of cobbles at 12 kilometres.
Yeah, so time to basically take stock, eat and drink, because they're then on the next 4-star sector at Uberly-à-Walleux.
Beautiful.
Sorry, rate me down below. 6 k's after that, it's then, though, onto the infamous True d'Arenberg, or the Arenberg Forest. 2.3 kilometres of the most brutal, bone-rattling cobbles in the world.
Yeah, how treacherous the fight for positioning is going into it will depend on the size of the group by that point in the race. But there have been many, many times where it's not dissimilar to a full-blown bunch sprint going into that forest.
I mean, those cobbles are scary to ride if you're out there training on your own, at your own speed, let alone hitting them at 60 kilometres per hour in a group. unable to see what's coming up in front of you. Horrific. Normally, there will be a selection of sorts by the end of the Forest of Arenberg, but there are still 93 kilometres and 19 cobbled sections still to go after it.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about Arenberg, isn't it? It's such a pivotal point in the race, and yet they still have more kilometres of cobbles to come than they'd already completed. So in many ways, it's kind of just the start of what's to come, isn't it?
Although I wouldn't like to say that to any of the riders at the other end of the Arenberg. Anyway, from there on, there is never more than 5.5 kilometres between any two consecutive sectors. They really do come thick and fast after that.
Yeah.
Sector 17 at Ornain de Wandigny is the other 3.7 kilometre sector with a 4-star rating. But the next 5-star sector is at Mons-en-Pévèle.
Yeah, which is often muddy, even if it's not rained for a while,
true.
isn't it? Yeah. It's also one of the longer stretches of pavé at 3 kilometres. Now, by that point in the race, there are normally riders all over the place with a clear selection at the front.
Yes. The third and final 5-star piece of pavé is the Carrefour de l'Arbre. And like Mons-en-Pévèle, it's not a straight one, unlike the Forest of Arenberg. And that's part of what makes the Carrefour de l'Arbre so hard. That left-hander, which comes basically midway through the sector, has caught a few riders out over the years. You really have to scrub your speed off there, and only the strongest will then be able to get back up to speed because they've already done 240 kilometres of racing by that point.
Yeah, plus they've only got 200 metres of respite before they hit the next sector, Gruson, although you can normally get a little bit of a break from the cobbles, can't you, with some smoother sections at the side of the road.
True, yeah, which is maybe why it's only given 2 stars as a rating, that particular one.
That's the one where they stick the barriers on, like intervals. Or is that the one after that?
I don't think it is that one. I think you can normally ride on the side of the road, but you do have to hop over the multiple potholes that grace that side of the road, so it's not entirely smooth. Anyway, after Gruson, just 2 sectors remain. Willem AM, and then the recently smooth-laid 300-metre Roubaix Espace Croupelant section.
The what?
Espace Charles Croupelant.
Oh yeah,
I
nice.
think. And then a few hundred metres later, after that final sector, they will start their lap and a half of that famous outdoor Roubaix velodrome, where eventually the winner will be crowned.
It's the bumpiest velodrome on the planet, that as well, isn't it? I mean, it probably feels smooth after the pavé,
Well, yeah,
but it's like...
And you've only got about 1.5 bar left in your tyres by that point.
Good point, yeah, and no fillings left in your teeth either. Anyway, it's at that point where the winner will be given the heaviest trophy in cycling, where they need to bench press. It's like 20 kilos or something bonkers, isn't it?
They look heavy. I've obviously never won one, but I probably would struggle to lift
Yes,
it.
nor
Hence
could you
why I
lift
haven't
it.
won one.
Right then, on to the women's race, and we don't need to go into too much more detail because from the first of their 17 sectors, the route traces exactly the same route as the men's. Ahead of that, though, they head southwards on a lap, which means they've got 63 kilometres of smoothish roads before they hit the first of the cobbles.
Brutal, though, that their first cobbled sector is 3.7 kilometres long, isn't it? And that, incidentally, is where Lizzie Deignan made her race-winning move in the inaugural edition in 2021. Whilst last year, her teammate at Trek Segafredo, Elisa Longo Borghini, did leave it a little later. 33 kilometres out was where she went solo last year.
That's right, yeah. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. Firstly, before we discuss the favourites, as Dan mentioned at the start of the preview, we're going to be going live with the breakaway show from 1400 BST on Saturday, where Orla will be joined by Danny Christmas, Adam Blythe and Joanna Rousel.
And then on Sunday, I am going to be joining the game bright and early from 9:30 BST. We'll bring you live coverage of both races just as soon as we receive the footage. For the men's, that will be from before kilometre 0, so you'll see the neutralised zone, whilst unfortunately for the women's, we still only get live coverage for the final few hours of the race, not the entirety of it.
Yeah, so unfortunately there is still no coverage available for the first part of the women's race, which is a shame, but we're going to be showing you everything that there is to show.
Yeah, we are indeed. So now is a very good time to subscribe to GCN Plus if you haven't done so already, although there are territory restrictions, so please check if it's available where you are. Don't forget as well, we'll also have a full written preview, which is free to view on the GCN app, as well as a host of other Paris-Roubaix related content there. And if you'd like to get your hands on a Hell of the North t-shirt or L'Enfer du Nord, that is available now over at shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com.
I've just noticed actually, it's not just cobbles, is it? There's a bit of enfer going on, isn't there?
There is indeed, yes. Well noticed.
Thanks, yeah. Can't get anything past me. Right, where On that GCN shop, also you can get our fans guide to pro cycling, I should say, which is the perfect book for racing fans, old and new, isn't there? There is something in there for everyone. Now, on top of all of that content, Manon is heading over to France as well to capture some tech content ahead of the race, which we're looking forward to. And then there'll also be a load of videos on GCN this week. It's almost like a Paris-Roubaix takeover on GCN.
From Mitch Docker, no less.
Yes, from Mitch Docker, yeah. We needed someone fully qualified
Yes.
to talk about cobbles.
Well, he's fully qualified. He's got a love-hate relationship with Paris-Roubaix, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Right, shall we do Weather Watch before we crack on with the favourites for the races this year?
Let's do Weather Watch. It's good news for the riders. Dry, sunny, around 15 degrees after a chilly start, and not that much in the way of wind either.
No, slightly disappointing for some fans, we'll have to admit. But given the amount of rain that we've had recently and on the run-up to where we are now, there is a chance that some of those cobbled sectors could still be a bit muddy. But then again, the forecast for most of this week is for dry weather, so there is plenty of time for those sectors to dry out. Right, onto the favourites then, and we're going to start with the women's race. Trek Segafredo have won both of the 2 editions thus far. Diagden, though, obviously hasn't returned to competition yet after giving birth to her second child, but all being well, last year's winner, Elisa Longo Borghini, should be on the start line.
She hasn't had the smoothest start to her season, now, has she? Or at least not latterly. She was forced to pull out of Strada Bianca through COVID and then didn't actually start racing until Dwars door of Vlaanderen last Wednesday. That said, she got 11th there and then put in a cracking sprint to finish 3rd at Flanders on Sunday. So she is definitely on her way up.
Yeah, it might pay her to be fresher than most others, mightn't it, going into the race on Saturday. Trek, though, have 3 other riders who are more than capable of winning the race, despite a lack of Ellen van Dijk as well. So we've got former world champion Elisa Balsamo, disqualified last year, you might remember, for drafting behind a team car. But then they've also got cyclocross specialist Shirin van Anrooy, who took her first pro road win recently at the Trofeo Alfredo Binder, and Lucinda Brandt, who was 3rd here behind her teammate Longo Borghini last year.
It is a strong team,
Very
that
strong,
one, isn't it? And despite the dominance of SD Works this season, I think you've got to say, haven't you, Trek are the team to beat there. I mean, they're unbeaten.
They are, yeah, it does. They have got strength in depth, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. But they might not have the single strongest rider in the race, have they? I think that mantle belongs to Lotte Kopecky.
I think you're right, yeah.
She was in a class of her own on Sunday, wasn't she, in Flanders? And she said her big goal this year is to win Roubaix.
Yeah, she didn't quite get it right, nor did the team the last couple of years, did they? But she is going to start definitely as the big favourite. I wouldn't be brave enough to bet against her winning Flanders and then Roubaix and doing the double this Saturday. We should point out here that we don't, as we record this, have much of a start list to look at when it comes to the women's race, or indeed some of the men's, so we're making educated guesses as to who will be participating. A rider I'm unsure about from that point of view is SD Works' Demi Vollering. I'm wondering if she'll skip Roubaix to concentrate on the Ardennes Classics down the road in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, regardless of whether she starts there, SD Works have other potential winners, don't they? The form of Marlene Russe, who could conceivably pull off a win here in the same manner as she did at Gent-Wevelgem, and Lorena Vibes, who should be more at home on the flat cobbles of France than the steep bergs of Flanders.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how she does on Saturday. Beyond those 2 big teams, though, I think DSM's Fife for Georgia is in with a very decent shout of a podium, maybe even taking the win on Saturday. She has come on leaps and bounds again this year. And again, like Vibes, I think that the parcours of Paris-Roubaix will suit her far more than the bergs of Flanders.
Yeah, Can SRAM going to be looking to improve on Elise Chabet's 4th place last year, particularly as they now have former winner Magnus Backstedt giving them direction before and during the race. Kasia Niewiadoma looked good in Flanders, but she didn't race here last year and didn't finish actually in 2021.
She's a very lightweight rider, isn't she? I think maybe she might skip it as well for the Ardennes. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, FDJ's best finisher last year was Marta Cavalli in 5th, but she's still on her break from the sport, or at least from racing right now. Uttrup Ludwig might also be concentrating on the Ardennes, so it might be Grace Brown that is their best bet for the French team on Saturday. Yeah,
Sylvia Persico showed great form on Sunday in Flanders, and given her cyclocross background, she's definitely one to watch for UAE Team ADQ, who also have Marta Bastianelli as well, whilst Movistar, in the absence of Annemiek van Vleuten, will be looking to Emma Norsgaard and Floortje Mackay.
What about Marianne Vos? I mean, I would absolutely love to see Marianne Vos take the win here. It just feels like she should have a cobblestone trophy in her trophy cabinet, or probably more like trophy warehouse, I would imagine, at this point. She has a delayed start to the season because she had to have an operation at the end of the cyclocross season, though.
Yeah, she'd be able to lift that cobble.
She would be, yes.
100%.
One-armed.
She's definitely not on top form at the minute, I guess, but she is the type of rider that could find a way to win this race.
Yeah, even when she's not on top form, I'd agree.
Yeah, I also wonder if Fem van Empel will do it.
That will be interesting. I mean, she did start her road season just at the weekend, I think it was, at the Vuelta Limburg Classic and took 8th place there. But I just wonder whether Jumbo-Visma and the management and DS's might decide it's a little bit too early for her to take the start of Roubaix.
That would be a shame, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, yeah.
You'd
I'd
think,
love to see her there.
I mean, it's Fem van Empel. You just throw her right in there. She'd do all right.
Yeah.
Anyway, there we go. We'll find out soon enough. Watch out too for Phoenix de Koning as well, actually, whilst you think about it, who are likely to field a number of riders with a lot of cyclocross experience.
Puck Pizza, maybe.
Yeah,
she was
exactly.
At Strada Bianca, wasn't she?
Yeah, and she did super well at Strada Bianca. Also, whilst talking about cyclocross, Zoe Baxter of EF, she'll be looking to get some experience in this race.
Yeah,
she's
no
got
pressure
strong
on her,
pedigree.
but yeah, given her dad's won it and given her prowess on a bike, you'd imagine she'll be going there for the experience, like you said, with a look to win this race in years to come.
Yeah.
Right then, on the men's side, there are 2 riders that we and everybody else will be looking at on Sunday. We can all guess who they are, Mathieu van der Poel and Wout van Aert. Neither of them, though, have ever won this race, but both have in the past finished on the podium.
Yeah, Van der Poel's only raced it twice, Van Aert 4 times, but things never quite seem to go their way.
Not as you'd expect on the day of Roubaix, do they? No. Well, if you look at the winners, though, from the last few years, last decade or so, it's far from a given that the really top favourites take the win. All incredibly solid riders, of course. They've won Paris-Roubaix, but Van Baarle, Heyman, Colbrelli, even Nicky Terpstra to a degree, they'd have been relatively low odds, but certainly not amongst the top 3 favourites, I don't think, with the bookies ahead of the race.
No, it's one of the reasons that this race is so fascinating, isn't it? I'm finding it really hard to call, actually, between the 2 Vans. Van der Poel has looked to have that little extra punch on the bergs, hasn't he, in Belgium? But on the flat, I can't see there's that much between them.
No, I'd agree. Maybe the difference between them will be between the strengths of the relative teams, because we've seen how strong Jumbo-Visma have been this year, and they look to be the stronger of those 2 teams, especially if last year's winner Dylan van Baarle has recovered enough from his injuries to take the start line on Sunday. Yeah,
Bernot is likely to skip the race, isn't he? But both Van Hooydonk and Laporte will be hoping to take advantage of the numbers game on Sunday. But you've got to say, haven't you, Alpecin de Koning, you've got Sylvain Dillier, who was a former runner-up in this race, and Søren Kragh Andersen, who will be hoping to recover from the illness that he had on the lead-up to Flanders.
He'll hope to recover from the illness, and he will also hope that he doesn't have to use his energy getting Van der Poel back into the race with 230 kilometres to go, won't he?
My word, yeah.
I could actually also see Jasper Philipsen from that team being right up there if everything goes his way and he doesn't have bad luck on Sunday, because he's looked really strong, not just in the sprint so far this year.
Well, maybe, you know, he's the kind of guy to get in that early move.
Yeah.
Because they can't end up on the back foot like they did it.
In fact, the more I think about it, the more I think actually maybe Jumbo don't have a massive advantage between the 2 teams for this race.
No.
Anyway, talking of strong teams, at least in previous years, Soudal Quickstep, they've had a 2nd consecutive season in which they've had very little to shout about in the cobbled classics. Their last winner was at Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne last year. Whoa. I did feel like they raced well at Flanders last Sunday, getting Melier up the road and Asgreen joining him a little bit later on. But in the end, 7th was all they could manage with Kasper Asgreen.
Yeah. Seneschal has always wanted to do well in this race.
Oh, yeah, he lives nearby, but again, he just doesn't look like he's had the form. I don't think he'll be on the podium, will he?
No, I can't think so. Lampard, he's been up there before.
Yeah, he had that horrific crash, didn't he?
That was the sector where I was thinking of, where you can ride on the bit next to the cobbles, but then every now and then
I think
there are those random bits
of
of barriers.
Yeah, true.
Anyway.
Again, though, even Lampard hasn't really shown any signs that he's capable of a podium for me on Sunday. A rider who is definitely in with a shout of the podium, though, in my mind, is Trek Segafredo's Mads Pedersen.
Well, you say that. I was looking this morning at his best result in Roubaix. You want to have a guess?
Well, I'm going to guess, since you're asking me, that it's not as impressive as you might think. I don't know, 17th?
No, 51st.
51st?
He's had a 51st and a 71st and a 95th plus 2 DNFs. He's done more than I thought he had. But
that's really surprising.
Isn't it just?
Isn't it? Well, you would have thought the race would suit him down to the ground, given his strengths. I know that his teammate, though, Jasper Stuyven, has had a couple of top 10s, 3 I think, over the course of his career, so he's proven himself in this race. I'll also watch out in Trek Segafredo for Dan O, the big Dutchman, big engine. I think he could be one of those surprise packages that you often get in Roubaix.
Yeah. Lotto Destinies, Florian Vermeesch will hope to be on the same form that saw him finish runner-up in 2021. I'm hoping to see Arnaud Delis on the start as well. He hasn't followed up that incredible performance at Omloop in the races since, but again, with his engine, his power, is surely a race he'll get a big result in before long.
You'd have thought so, yeah. It's been disappointing not to see him follow up what we saw on the Muur van Gerardsbergen at Omloop, hasn't he? But it will come soon, no doubt. On to Ineos Grenadiers then, who bring Filippo Ganna back into the squad. No doubt he has the power. Everybody knows that. But does he have the positioning skills? That's the question I'm asking myself. I mean, he was good at positioning himself ahead of the Cipressa and the Poggio at MSR, but I've noted that he does struggle on occasion. I don't think he really likes the jostling for position, which you kind of need in this race, don't you? Especially before the first sectors.
It's weird as well, isn't it, to think that he wouldn't like bunny hopping onto the Forest of Arenberg at 60 kilometres an hour blind, you know.
Yeah, what a weirdo.
Yeah, totally. I think Ineos will miss Ben Turner, won't they, probably, who is unfortunately out with injury. Luke Rowe is the man to get Ganna into a good position,
And almost guaranteed to do that very well, isn't he?
I think so, yeah.
I don't think Pidcock's riding, though. There was speculation about it. I would imagine that he's going to skip this race and concentrate on Amstel, maybe Flèche and Liège as well. I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Do you think he's not big enough?
Well, he's won, is it the junior and under 23, or just, I can't remember. He's won one of them anyway, so. But it's very different once you get to the pros, isn't it? I think at the moment, there's not many riders as light as him that have won this race. Yeah,
because I was surprised when Pogacar in his post-race interview at Flanders said that he would need to put on a few kilos to do well at Roubaix. Because you look at him going so fast on the cobbles of Flanders, which are different, and you just think, like,
well, he didn't look too shabby last year at the Tour de France for the Roubaix. I know it's, again, a very different race, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
Sheffield of Ineos should also be there for them, but he's had a lot of crashes so far this year, hasn't he? And they must be starting to take their toll, you would have thought.
That's right, yeah. Moving on, Alexander Kristoff can never be counted out, can he? And in Uno X, we've also got Werenskold and Tiller as well, who are both super strong. But should we talk Bahrain Victorious?
Let's talk Bahrain
as well.
Victorious.
Matej Mohoric was involved in that second high-speed crash in Flanders on Sunday, but he has said, thankfully, he wasn't badly injured.
Which was a surprise, given the speed, wasn't it?
Oh, my word, yeah. And he said that Roubaix is his main goal for the spring.
Yeah, he has. Fifth in this race last year has obviously motivated him for more. And he's one of those riders, a bit like a Dylan van Baarle, who's still allowed off the leash, isn't he? Despite having won as many monuments in his career as Van Aert has in his, he's sort of allowed to go up the road, isn't he, without people chasing him down.
Yeah, like Van Baarle as well. Fred Wright is also going to be in that Bahrain squad, you thought. 8th at Flanders shows that he is on form, and he'll be looking to get up the road again on Sunday, won't he?
He will be, yes. AG2R, or As You Deserve meanwhile, will be hoping that Oliver Naesen and Greg van Avermaet can refine their form. Van Avermaet, a former winner of this race, of course, and he's finished it all 12 times that he started, but has been struggling with, I think, injury or illness as of late. Watch out as well, though, for Groupama FDJ, because Stefan Kung, probably the most reliable one-day rider there is right now, outside of the big three. And Arnaud Démare, the Frenchman, he always fancies himself, I think, as a Roubaix contender.
I would like to see him do well here, actually.
It would be great, yeah.
It would be cool.
It would be good to see a Frenchman do really well.
This is it, yeah, a bit of romance there. Another former winner, Peter Sagan, but as we keep saying, he is looking a shadow of his former self, and he crashed out Flanders on Sunday as well. Watch out for Degenkolb, Van Mark and Stibar if they can wind back the clock a little bit. Plus, Garcia Cortina for Movistar as well. Okay, anyone we've missed?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Lazcano of Movistar.
What?
The cycling cult hero that finished second at Dwars door Vlaanderen, having been in the break all day, getting caught, attacking again, and finishing second to Christophe Laporte.
There you go. You heard it here first.
Or you can just ignore everything that I've just said if he doesn't do anything on Sunday. All right, predictions, Si. And before we get onto them, I think we should have a look back at what your predictions were for the Tour of Flanders.
Van der Poel for the win on the men's side of things. On the women's side of things, I think Kopecky.
Okay.
From Demi Vollering.
Not bad at all.
Thank you very much.
Si. Very impressive, actually, I might add. In fact, so impressive, I'm going to let you go first on the predictions for Roubaix this weekend, and I'm just going to copy you.
Okay. So I'm going to go Van der Poel.
You know, you should
Again.
think about this ahead of the video.
I know, it's weird, isn't it? I shouldn't get caught by surprise. Van der Poel again. That's heart overhead. I don't think he's going to do it. I think it'll be another early move and he'll be on the back foot and he won't be able to get back to the front. But I'd love to see him do it. And then on the women's side of things, I think Kopecki's going to double up.
Well, those are the two rides I was going to go for as well. But instead, I'm going to go for Van Aert. I would, at this point, really just like to see him win another monument because I kind of feel for him with the pressure that must be building year on year from the Belgian media because he's never won a cobbled monument before.
No.
Despite all of his wins at huge races, big one days that aren't monuments, Tour de France stage wins, overall terrain, he just never quite seems to get it right on the big days in the cobbles. And so I'd like to see him get that duck off his back, really, because I just want the Belgian media to leave him alone. And on the women's side, I would definitely go for Lotte Kopecky. I'll go for another heart pick, which is Pfeiffer Georgie.
Oh, yeah.
Like we said, she's come on leaps and bounds for Team DSM this year, and I think Roubaix as a race really suits her qualities. And it'd be great to have another British winner, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
After
My
losing
heart pick on the women's is Voss, of course. I just think she's...
Oh, yeah, true.
I'd love to see her do it.
There could be a lot of heart picks, though, couldn't there, for
There could.
various reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sagan could be a heart pick, but I'd have no hope of getting any points if we had a points classification. As ever, though, we would love to hear your thoughts on who you think the favourites are to win. Actually, why not give us a head pick and a heart pick for each? Who do you think is going to win, and who would you like to see winning each race? That's pretty much all for the preview show, though.
Yeah.
Don't forget to join us for our live coverage at the weekend on both Saturday and Sunday. We will see you then.